Hi, Web Design 1 class. This is Mrs. Miskin. This is the CSS practice page, the first one that we're going to do. This one deals mostly with centering. I'm going to go ahead and show it up here on the board and be able to make notes. Hopefully that's easier for you to follow along with too. And I will also share my screen to show some of my code and some different examples that way. First of all, you're going to go to Schoology. We need to download some images. There's also a screenshot of this page that we're going to be recreating today on Schoology. So let's go to week 7. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see where that's at. Okay, so on week 7, you're going to go to 7-3, the CSS practice page. So you'll see right here the screenshot. And you can download that if you want to look at it a little bit closer. I've been super nice to you and I have copied the paragraph text so you can just copy and paste it when we get to that point. Now there are 2 images that you will need to have. So remember that you need to click on it, have it open up, and then click the download image. Don't just right click from the main screen. So make sure you click that download image. And then also put it inside of your images folder that's inside of web design. We're going to create this page in your web design folder, so you need to have access to them in your images folder right there. They need to be located close to each other. So do that same thing with the analog specialist. This is the logo. So do that same thing, hit the download image, put it in your web design images folder. Okay, there's also a font family on here. We'll get to that when we get to styling. All right, so I'll give you a couple of minutes now to go ahead and download those images. Make sure that they're in your web design images folder. You can pause or stop the video for just a second and then come back and we'll start deconstructing. Okay, you should have those images downloaded. Open up brackets now, and you're going to create a new page. You can call it analog.html, and then you'll put in the required tags. So doc type, open and close HTML, open and close head, open and close body. Go ahead and pause the video for just a few minutes and put those tags in. Okay, now that you've got your skeleton ready, we're going to start putting the content into this page. So I've got the preview, that screenshot up on the board right here so that you can see it. And I will go through what elements make this up. And that's what we're going to be doing next week too with CSS. We will deconstruct the page into its HTML elements first, and then we'll add the styling to it. So first of all of these things, because they're visible, are going to be within body. So this right here, everything out here represents the body. Now, by looking at this, we're going to deconstruct it a little bit smarter. So we're going to think ahead. Looking at this right here, we have a different colored background here than we do right here. So what that tells us is that we need another container so that we can have a different background color behind all of those elements besides body. Now we can use either main, because this is just one single page right here, and we don't necessarily have a header and a footer and different parts. We could use main. I would probably suggest using div, since main doesn't totally apply. We do have a navigation bar here and a logo. So you can use main if you want to, but I would prefer to use the div. So inside of body, you're going to put a div tag, open and close. Now let's look inside of here. This element should be pretty easy. We just downloaded that. That's an image. So in your code, inside of the div, add the image. Okay, I'll give you a second for that. You can pause the video. All right, next, this element right here. We've talked about this when we went over lists and links. Most of the time, a navigation bar is going to be made up of an unordered list. So right here, don't worry about the lines for now. We can add those in styling. We're not using the HR anymore, okay? So we will use that and we'll put those in when we do styling. But for now, just do an unordered list with these 5 list items. Okay, so each one of these will be a list item. Go ahead and take a couple of minutes and add those into your code, and just go ahead and pause the video. All right, now that you have that unordered list in, right, directly underneath that is another image. Okay, you can see there are very few HTML elements that make this page up. It's really the styling that makes everything appear different. Okay, so add that image in. You can pause the video. All right, very last, very simply, it's text, paragraph, okay? And because I was super nice, I have that text on Schoology, so you can go on to Schoology on week 7, 7-3, and you can copy the paragraph text and just paste it in. Okay, so take a minute and do that, pause the video. All right, you should have your entire HTML page constructed. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and show my HTML page and make sure that they look similar. All right, now I did add a header and nav on here, so you can ignore that. You don't necessarily have to have them. I was just trying to be a little more correct in my HTML5 styling or structure. So we open up with the doc type always, HTML, head. Now I do have a title in here. I've also got the link to this style sheet. Don't worry if you don't have that yet. We'll do that in the next step. So inside of the body, I'm using a div. I did add a header and nav, but I don't have any styling for those, so they're not really being used. So don't worry about that. There's that image with the logo in it. Here's the unordered list with those 5 list items. Next, I did add a main. You don't have to do that. And then there's the keys image and that paragraph. Okay, so you don't have to have all of those HTML5 tags in there. You really just need the div. If you want to be more correct with your HTML5, you can, but you don't have to. Okay, so that should be, I'm just going to scroll down a little bit so you can see I do have a closing HTML tag at the bottom. Okay. All right. You can go ahead and pause the video if you need to, just to look through my code and compare it with yours. Make sure that you've got everything before you move on. Okay, let's go back to our screenshot, and we're going to start styling. So I'll go ahead and erase these things here. Okay, starting with the outermost element, with the body, we already know that it has a different background color. We can see that. This is a gray versus white that's behind the rest of these. So first styling rule that you need to add is for body, to change the background color. If you also noted on Schoology, there is a font family listed, and we can put that into body. So if you haven't already, go ahead and stop the video and add or create a CSS file. You can call that analog also, analog.css, and link it in the head of your HTML page. You need to go back just a little bit to the screenshot of my code. You can do that and see that link reference. You should be familiar with that by now though. So add that in, and then we'll start styling. That way you can save and preview as we go to make sure that you're getting the same look here. All right, in your CSS file, we're gonna have a rule for body. And we're gonna have that background color. And I'm just gonna put gray for now. If you feel like it needs to be a little bit different, if it needs to be light gray or something else like that, we can adjust that later on. I will show you my CSS at the end so that you can compare exactly, but we're just gonna get as close as we can, and then you can make adjustments later. Okay, so background color, and then the font family. I believe it was Courier New. So because it's 2 words, it does need to be in quotation marks. Okay, and we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, go ahead and put that in your styling, save it, preview it. You should see the entire thing with a gray background. All right, moving on to the next element. And this right here, the div. Now we know that it is centered, okay, because it only takes up this much space and the body is the rest on the outside. So the div will need to be centered. Remember our centering methods, div is a block element. So we need 3 properties. We need a width, we need margin left to be auto and margin right to be auto. We also can see a couple of other things with this div. That first, that there is a border, and then that it has a different background color. Okay, so let's start with that div. So I'm adding margin left auto. Margin right auto, background color white. Now let's look at the width. I didn't put anything in there for now. We can see that there's a bit of space here and a bit of space over here. What is the width of this image right here? Go ahead and figure that out. And then you want to have a little bit more space on either side so that we can have some space around it. Okay, and if I remember right, I believe that it's about 600. I'm just going to double check really quick. Okay, yeah, the width of that is about 600. So I'm going to give the width of the div 800. Okay, 800 px. Okay, that should give me about 100 pixels of space here and here. All right, then we also need to have this double border. So we'll use the shorthand because it goes on all 4 sides. And let's start with maybe 3 to 5 pixels. Let's do 5 px. And we'll just say double. And we'll make that black. If we want to come back and change the size on that, we can. Okay, so just double check that. Make sure that's in your CSS. You can pause the video at any time if you need to. If you need to catch up, that's not a problem. All right. Now let's go on to the next things inside of the div. We're going to do a little bit of a shortcut here. We have two different images. They are both centered. You can see this one up here and this one. So we can use the element selector for image. We can't always do that because if we have multiple images, maybe we don't want all of them centered. But in this instance, we will. So we'll use the element. And we learned yesterday how to center images. So first we need display block. And then margin left auto, margin right auto. Okay. Go ahead and put that into your CSS. Save it, preview it, and then you should have both of those images centered now. All right, the next thing down is this unordered list. Now it is appearing horizontally, and we learned how to change that in our lists and links lesson just a little bit ago. Okay, so let's start first with the unordered list. We can see that we've got a top border and a bottom border. They're different sizes. Okay, so we're going to come over here to the unordered list. And let's make one other adjustment. We can see that it's not going to take up 100% of its container. All right, the div is the container, but the div comes to out here. We want it to line up with this image. So we want to also give that unordered list the centering property so that it will center inside of the div and then have some space on the outside. So we learned that this is already 600. So we'll stick with that. So we need a width of 600. Margin left auto. Margin right auto. Okay, so that will center it in alignment with this. And if you center it right now, it's still going to be left aligned with all of the list items top to bottom. Okay, so don't worry about that just yet. Now we need to have that border top and border bottom. We can see that they're both solid lines. One is just thicker than the other. So let's do border dash top. And let's make that one 3px solid black. And we'll do border dash bottom. And let's make that one 1px. Also solid and black. Okay, I'll give you just a second to add that in. Then once you save it and preview it, you should see that top and bottom border come in. Okay, remember you can pause the video at any time if you need a few more minutes. Okay, now these list items do need to be made horizontal. So we learned that the other day. We need to have a list item. And then we need to tell it display inline. Okay, when we do that, they will all mesh together over here. So we need to give them some padding so that there'll be space all the way around it. And you'll need to adjust that a little bit so that you can experiment, put something in there. If that doesn't work, if it's too much or too little, you can change it, okay? So let's do padding. And I'm just gonna start with 20 px. Remember, I will show you my code, so if you want to make some adjustments or if it doesn't look quite right on your screen, you can go ahead and change that. Okay, so make sure you've got the list items. Now we've already adjusted this image right here. We've already centered it. So the last thing then is our paragraph down here. We should be able to tell right away that it is also centered. Okay, that's the only paragraph on the page, so we can again use the element selector. And we're going to use the text align center because it's a text element. All right, now, when you've added that, you can save it and preview it. You'll probably notice that that paragraph starts here and wraps down, and then it does center, but it's still not aligned here. Because it is a text element and a block element, we can center it both ways. All right, so in our paragraph, we can again give it that width of 600 px, margin left auto, and margin right auto. Okay, give you just a second for that one. All right, one other thing that you can add, if you notice where the breaks are here, you can add the BR tag within the paragraph if you want those to wrap exactly like this one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to show you the code for the CSS. Okay, there was my HTML. Let's switch to CSS. And I'm just going to make that a little bit smaller. Apologize, that's going to look super teeny. Hopefully you can see that. Just starting at the top, we've got background. I did use light gray. There's my font family Courier New. Then I've added Courier as a backup and monospace as that category at the very end. Okay, div, background, width, margin. I've used a shorthand on this. If you've just got margin left auto, margin right auto, that's just fine. Okay, and then the border. Okay, added some spacing in the nav. That's okay, don't worry about that if you don't have it. And then again, the image is changed to display block so that it can be centered, both of them. And then margin, I'm using the shorthand. So this is top and bottom is the 10 px and auto is left and right. Okay, unordered list, we've got that width, margin again. Okay, so top and bottom is 0 for the unordered list. And then I've got auto in that second spot for left and right. You do have some padding. You can add padding if you'd like to, if you feel like you need a little bit more space. There's border top and border bottom. List item, I've got display inline. I've used padding 15 px. So if you need to change that, you can. I took a shortcut here and did the text transform to uppercase. You can do that if you want to. You probably just typed it in all caps, and that's fine too. And then I'm using font size 20 px just to make it a little bit bigger. And then on the paragraph, I've also changed that font size, and I've got the width and margin set so that the block itself will center, and text align center at the very end. So within the block, it will also be centered. Okay, if you need to pause the video at any of these points so you can go over the code, that's great. It doesn't have to look exactly the same as mine. Just get it as close as possible. Okay, this is just practice. Okay, and that is our first practice page using CSS and specifically centering method.